West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
So in the aftermath of Donald Trump pardoning Mike Flynn, there has been a chorus of voices that has gone up. And it's a chorus crying out that this is corruption. It's a chorus crying out this is cronyism. A chorus crying out that this is un-American and it's violative of the rule of law. And then there's another chorus of voices, somewhat quieter, saying the presidential pardon power is so broad and so vast that it can never be challenged in court. I would call this chorus of voices the presidential pardon purists, the people who maintain that no matter how corrupt a presidential pardon is, it can never be challenged in court. I disagree. I maintain that there is no absolute, unfettered governmental power. I contend that virtually every exercise of governmental authority has some check, some balance, including the presidential pardon power. But don't take my word for it. Let's see what Bill Barr had to say about it. This from the Hill. Quote, Barr, it would be a crime for president to pardon someone in exchange for their silence. Well, maybe the Hill has it wrong. Let's look at the Business Insider. Quote, William Barr says it would be a crime for Trump to pardon someone in exchange for their silence. Close quote. Now, rarely do I cite Bill Barr as authority for any proposition, except maybe how to, go about corruptly protecting a criminal president. He's darn good at that. But even Bill Barr acknowledged in his sworn testimony before Congress it would be a crime for the president to pardon someone to buy their silence.
Do you believe a president could lawfully issue a pardon in exchange for the recipient's promise to not incriminate him?
No, that would be a crime.
Thank you.
So I would contend that the presidential pardon purists have this one wrong. So even Bill Barr says it's a crime for the president to pardon somebody in exchange for their silence. So against that backdrop, let's look at the cases of Mike Flynn and Roger Stone. But before we do that, let me just set out one other example of why I think The presidential pardon purists are on the wrong side of this argument. Let's assume in his remaining months in office, Donald Trump set up a pardon kiosk at the front door of the White House. And he sent out the word that anybody who wants a pardon for a friend, a family member, a criminal associate, anybody who's been convicted of a crime and serving a prison term, anybody who might be pending charges, who wants a pardon, can simply come to the pardon kiosk, write out a check to Donald J. Trump for $1 million, and he will print them out a pardon. Easy. The presidential pardon purists would say, oh well, can't be challenged in court. The president's pardon power is broad, it's vast, it's unfettered. I disagree. Let's turn briefly to Mike Flynn and Roger Stone. And Roger Stone, as you may remember, didn't get a pardon. He got a sentence commutation. That's just a fancy term for a president saying you don't have to go to prison, right? I am wiping away your prison term, right? A pardon means I'm wiping away your conviction altogether like it never existed. A sentence commutation means, well, your conviction remains intact, but I am wiping away your sentence. I am telling Roger Stone you don't need to report to prison to serve the 40 months that Judge Amy Berman Jackson sentenced you to. Follow the bouncing corruption here, and then let's finish up with why this must be challenged in court. So Roger Stone, as you'll remember, lied to Congress over and over and over again to protect the president, so the president didn't get in trouble. And he lied about the fact that he was working with Julian Assange and WikiLeaks to get these stolen emails, to weaponize them, to deliver them to the Trump campaign so they could nefariously use them against Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. Roger Stone lied over and over about it. He got caught and he got criminally charged for it. And then Donald Trump sent out a series of tweets and made a series of statements that in substance conveyed the following to Roger Stone. Stay strong, don't snitch, don't flip, don't tell on me, I got you on the back end. That was the message that was being conveyed loud and clear from Donald Trump to Roger Stone. What did Roger Stone do? He stayed strong. He didn't flip. He didn't snitch. He went to trial and he got convicted. He went down in flames. I was in the courtroom watching that trial, and he had no viable defense. He got convicted. He got sentenced by Judge Amy Berman Jackson to 40 months in prison. And in fact, she said, and I think I can quote it verbatim, you know, Mr. Stone, you weren't prosecuted for standing up for the president. You were prosecuted for covering up for the president. And you're going to prison for 40 months. A few days before Roger Stone was set to report to the Federal Bureau of Prisons to begin serving his term, he gave an interview, a public interview. And here's what he said. He said, Mr. President, I didn't flip on you. I didn't snitch. I stayed strong. And now, you know what I want? I don't even want a pardon, Mr. President. I want a sentence commutation. I don't want to report to prison in 3 days to begin my 40-month sentence. And that same day that Roger Stone gave that interview demanding the other part of the quid pro quo from Donald Trump commuted his sentence from 40 months in prison down to 0. The presidential pardon purists would respond to that scenario by saying, oh well, nothing can be done about it. President's pardon power is vast, it's broad, it's unfettered, can't be challenged in court. Well, there's no oh well about this, folks. Oh well does not move us in the direction of justice. You know what does? A court challenge. a court challenge is what moves us in the direction of justice. And it's the right thing to do. And justice matters.
It is Friday, the 27th of November of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, hope you had a very nice Thanksgiving. It was healthy and wealthy and wise. Wise being that you stayed in place, didn't have a whole lot of people from out of the area have dinner with you. So hopefully everything will turn out okay. We had a very quiet Thanksgiving yesterday with my elderly mom and my Trump voting brother. It was very quiet just as I was putting the dinner on the table. And my Trump bro started going off about how doctors and hospitals are getting kickbacks for inflating COVID numbers. And of course I said that was a conspiracy theory. And of course he got totally pissed off, started storming around the house, yelling at me, calling me a loser, wanting to kick my ass. He's a big guy too. You know, he's Schwarzenegger. He's huge. Cut. This guy is, he's not fat. No way. This guy is cut. Once boxed in heavyweight Golden Gloves competition. So he usually gets his way when he tells people, I'm going to kick your ass. Well, I boxed as a light heavyweight, so there. Anyway, I'm the oldest. No one, especially my younger brother, is going to threaten me. But it was quite disconcerting because just one disagreement. I wasn't even able to explain why that was a conspiracy theory. Comes right out of Q, of course. But apparently these snowflakes are incapable of having anyone disagree with them, and they will just storm out. So that was rather, as I said, disconcerting, because he's still my brother. Anyway, I don't go around telling people I'm going to kick their ass. I kind of stopped doing that when I was a teenager. In fact, I probably stopped doing it before I was a teen, but it's certainly an adolescent behavior, and you don't expect that to come from a guy who's, 55, 56 years old. Come on. Or no, is he 60 now? That's right. I'm getting old. He's 60 already. So I don't understand how it is that this Trump brainwashing is still going on. I thought the guy lost. No, he's still putting the BS out there. And it just bothered me when my brother was spewing these lies, because it's an insult to our sister who was a nurse. It's an insult to the doctors across America risking their lives. Oh, of course, my Trump brother invoked the Oath Keeper sheriff here in the county, who he is friends with. And they were talking about how these COVID deaths or COVID cases are inflated because the doctors and the hospitals are taking kickbacks. Look, the CARE Act allowed a 20% increase for Medicare reimbursements, charges, and then reimbursements because of COVID, because it takes more effort, more labor, more materiel to treat a COVID patient. No one is gaming the system to get that 20% extra. But they believe it, and it's true, and they want to kick your ass if you don't believe them. But when you tell them, go ahead, kick my ass, they kind of back down because they don't expect that. They expect you to cower. So I blame Trump. I blame his whole machinery. How dare you? I hate what he's done to America, but I hate more what he's done to my family. What is it about this guy that causes families to splinter so? I call it brainwashing. I will say that my mom and I had a very nice Thanksgiving duck with all the trimmings. I even had lobster. I got really full quick, too. Had to have the meal in phases, so it would have been nice to have my brother there. But he didn't like duck anyway. That was the other thing. He could have told me a couple of weeks ago when I told him we're having duck that he doesn't like duck. So, of course, you know, his form of etiquette is to call the day of, after I've already got the duck prepped and in the oven, that he doesn't like duck. Can I make him something else? Well, I didn't get mad at him then. I didn't get mad at him. I got mad because, you know, it's an insult to the chef. It's an insult to the host. I would have cooked something different entirely if he had told me, you know, I don't really like duck. But I don't know where he learned his manners, because he didn't learn them. I was sent to the ants, the great ants. They taught me etiquette at a young age. So much so they would dress me up in a little kid tuxedo and take me to the Brown Derby in L.A. just so I would learn etiquette. And it worked. But I guess my brother missed out on that. I know he did. So I don't know. It's just, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're supposed to make nice, okay? How do you make nice if you have, like, one disagreement? And as soon as there's a disagreement, they're out the door screaming they want to kick your ass. Beg, oh, please stay. Come on. How about them making an effort, huh? Now, I will say, our sister, the nurse, did say that he deleted all of his pro-Trump BS off of his Facebook page, took down all of the giant, and when I say giant Trump flags, I mean giant Trump flags. I don't know if he's taken down that goddamn violation of the flag code blue line flag. You know, he likes the idea that he was a cop briefly. Very briefly. So cops can do no wrong, but doctors are trying to game the system. Please. He wants to defund doctors, not the cops. So, yeah, I got a bit upset, I will admit. I wish that my mom hadn't had to hear that. Though, she is asking, well, maybe doctors and hospitals are getting kickbacks. So I have to, then explain to my mom how it works. They're allowed a 20% increase. There's no fraud anywhere, and that's from Trump's own Medicare Inspector General, or HHS Inspector General. We can't believe that, I guess, because anything that disagrees with what Trump and the Trump maggots believe is the deep state and therefore not real. It's fake. So that's how it works. That's how these lies spread. And if you disagree with them and try to show them facts. I wasn't even able to get to the facts. It was like the guy's out the door threatening to kick my ass because I'm the loser. Okay. I think there's a little dynamic going on there with my baby brother. Is he jealous? I guess. But enough of this personal trauma. It made me sad. Let's just be clear. Very, very sad. Let's take a look on what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The lame duck Trump administration will appeal a court order barring the expulsion of migrant children seeking asylum. A judge said you can't kick them out, and Trump says, oh, just watch us. A prominent Washington lawyer defending Steve Bannon against border wall fraud charges has dropped out of the case. They say amicable, but they always say that. And New York Governor Andrew Cuomo dismissed the Supreme Court's religious gatherings ruling as irrelevant. Indeed. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the UK asked its medicine regulator to assess the AstraZeneca-Oxford vaccine amid questions about preliminary results from the trials. And a Cambodian court began hearing the cases of nearly 130 government critics charged with treason for taking part in nonviolent protests. Wow, that seems to be like a virus going around. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com to the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, so go ahead, chat. To the leftish of that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page, and if you could please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and maybe send us the equivalent of an espresso type coffee drink once a month. We take those dollars and we stretch them beyond compare, and we have a lot of experience doing so. Almost 10 years of continuous resistance broadcasting because of your generosity. And we want to thank those of you who have been so generous over these many years, and would also like to extend, a preliminary thanks to those of you considering to do so. We pay our bills and we fly under the radar and we continue resisting, and we also have to get some needed machinery and the attendant software needed to continue this powerhouse of resistance. Thank you very much. Follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of at Justice Putnam, and I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that linked up on Twitter and other social media, and about 10 minutes before showtime, so check that out. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. All right. Let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. The virtual French 77s are ready for your imbibing pleasure, by the way. Noman Merchant brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe, and Noman is from the Associated Press. The U.S. government appealed a judge's order barring the expulsions of immigrant children who cross the border alone, a policy enacted during the coronavirus pandemic to deny the children asylum protections. Oh, sounds like an excuse. Judge Emmett Sullivan, yes, that Emmett Sullivan, issued a preliminary injunction on November 18th, sought by advocates for immigrants that barred expulsions of unaccompanied children under public health laws. The Justice Department filed a notice of appeal on Wednesday night to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. It also asked Sullivan to issue a stay of the injunction pending appeal, a request he previously denied. Since March, border agents have expelled 200,000 immigrant adults and children, citing the pandemic and a need to prevent the spread of the virus, even though COVID-19 is spreading broadly through border communities and the country at large. Stephen Miller just doesn't like brown people. Sullivan's order only covered children who crossed the border without a parent and not adults or parents and children. At least 8,800 accompanied children have been expelled without having a chance to seek asylum protections or speak to a lawyer. Most people have been expelled within hours or days, though the Trump administration detained hundreds of children for weeks in hotels near the U.S.-Mexico border for days or weeks at a time until another judge barred that practice. President-elect Joe Biden has said he will reverse several of Trump's immigration programs when he takes office in January. Biden has not stated whether he will stop expulsions of immigrants. In his filing, the Justice Department cited the spread of the virus in border communities in Arizona and Texas. It warned that Sullivan's order likely will have an irreversible impact on public health. Well, what about COVID Barrett's decision? What about hers? The Associated Press reported on October 3rd that top officials at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention resisted issuing an emergency declaration allowing immigrant expulsions because it lacked a public health basis, but Vice President Mike Pence ordered the agency to move forward anyway because cruelty and racism is the plan. Anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A prominent Washington lawyer defending Trump's former chief strategist against charges that he cheated donors to a southern border wall notified a judge that he's no longer the right lawyer for the job. Attorney William A. Burke sent a letter to the trial judge in Manhattan Federal Court to say that Burke and Steve Bannon had amicably agreed that new lawyers would be better suited to Bannon's defense strategy. He said, Bannon is looking for new attorneys. Oh, in other words, his current attorney has flown the coop before Bannon has interviewed others to replace him. Let's go on. Bannon faces a May 24th trial on criminal charges alleging that Bannon and at least 3 others unlawfully raised over $25 million for the We Build the Wall campaign. The group sought to fund a southern border wall. Well, it sounds to me like they were trying to fund Bannon's fascist university that he's trying to get in Italy. He has pleaded not guilty, that being Bannon, to charges alleging that thousands of investors were duped into thinking all of their donations would go toward the project, even though Bannon diverted over $1 million, paying salary of one campaign official and personal expenses for himself. Bannon was arrested in August aboard a luxury yacht off the coast of Connecticut. Yeah, from a Chinese industrialist of all things. And he is free on $5 million bail. Really? Burke is a former federal prosecutor who was a top lawyer for President George W. Bush. He also represented Bannon, former White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, and former White House counsel Don McGahn in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's probe into interference in the 2016 presidential election. Hurley and Humera Pamuk of Reuters bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, dismissed as irrelevant a U.S. Supreme Court decision blocking coronavirus restrictions imposed on religious gatherings, saying it related to specific areas that were no longer considered high risk. The court, which has a 6-3 conservative majority, voted 5-4 late on Wednesday in favor of requests by the Roman Catholic Diocese of Brooklyn and 2 Orthodox Jewish congregations for an injunction to block the restrictions from being enforced. The order marked one of the first consequential actions on the court involving Trump's new appointee, conservative Justice Amy COVID Barrett, who cast a deciding vote in favor of the religious groups. Conservative Chief Justice John Roberts dissented, along with the court's 3 liberals. Happy Thanksgiving, Trump tweeted on Thursday in response to the decision. Oh, really? You know, I would like to have a religious right to not be killed by the religious right. What about my religious right? The case stemmed from an October 6th decision by Cuomo to shut down non-essential businesses in targeted areas where infections have spiked, including some neighborhoods in Brooklyn. New York has categorized areas where coronavirus infections are increasing in severity as yellow, orange, or red. Under Cuomo's restrictions, houses of worship and red zones could remain open at 25% capacity, up to a maximum of 10 people. In a call with reporters, Cuomo said the High Court's ruling would have no impact on the state's virus control efforts because the red zone status for the area in question had expired last week. So why was the case not moot? It's irrelevant for any practical impact because the zone that they were talking about has already been moot, the governor said. I think this was really just an opportunity for the court to express its philosophy and politics, indeed. Now, I must say, when you go into a church, the fire marshal has a maximum limit of how many people can be in there. Is Amy going to overturn the fire marshal's rules and regulations? Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Shadows of Mandalay. There have been about half a dozen film versions of Daphne du Maurier's 1938 English Gothic romance, Rebecca, in which a domestic worker falls in love with and marries rich, lonely widower Maxim de Winter and settles into his ultra-lavish estate of Mandalay, only to find herself living and loving under the oppressively deep shadow of his deceased wife, the amazing, the admired, the worshipped Rebecca. Like I said, about half a dozen films, but most people think of Alfred Hitchcock's 1940 version, starring no one special, just Joan Fontaine and Laurence Olivier. And if you don't think of it, that's another way your previous life choices have failed you. Which leads us to the question, how in the world can director Ben Wheatley, or anyone for that matter, follow Hitchcock's Rebecca? Well, first, gone is Fontaine's languid, ethereal recitation of the novel's famous first line, "Last night I dreamt I went to Mandalay again." Instead, Lily James busts out an almost matter-of-fact tone, setting up right there the pace of the movie, which is fast. Not me talking fast, but Wheatley and editor Jonathan Amos have a story to tell and they keep things moving. Also, where Hitchcock shot in moody, apprehensive black and white, Wheatley and cinematographer Laurie Rose fill up their filmic canvas with luscious color that highlights motifs of water and flowering plants, color that lets Wheatley and costumer Julian Day indulge in an unabashed impressionistic costume design. Why is Armie Hammer introduced in that gold suit? 'Cause De Winter is the treasure to be won. Speaking of changes, De Winter is supposed to be 40-ish and our heroine 20-ish, but Hammer and James appear about the same age. That's because Wheatley says he is done with movies where older men bed gals as young as their daughters. Good call. Story still works. Good for him. And good for all of them. I don't know what Hitchcock would think, but their Rebecca certainly made it fun for me to dream of Mandalay again. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Suzanne Bard. In North America, fossils of duck-billed dinosaurs are abundant. So abundant that paleontologists sometimes ignore them in search of more exciting species, like T-Rex or Triceratops.
They were so common we often wouldn't collect them and just left them out in the field.
University of Bath evolutionary biologist Nick Longrich. But duckbills had never been found in Africa, so Longrich did a double-take when he was visiting the Natural History Museum of Marrakesh in Morocco and came across the 66-million-year-old jawbone of a previously undocumented duckbill species.
And I instantly knew what it was, and I just couldn't figure out what it was doing there.
Its presence in North Africa was problematic because during the late Cretaceous period, the planet was warmer, which means sea levels were higher.
Africa was isolated from all the other continents by water, and there didn't seem to be any way that they could get there.
Unless, perhaps, duckbills swam hundreds of miles across open ocean from what is now Europe. It's not as far-fetched as it might sound. In fact, paleontologists once thought duckbill dinosaurs were aquatic, but that theory eventually fell out of favor. Nonetheless, there's evidence that duckbills were well adapted for swimming.
They have these really big, powerful hind limbs, great big feet. They've got a long, deep tail that they could have used for sculling. So they might have been pretty good swimmers.
Plus, other animal species have been known to cross oceans, albeit rarely. Elephants, monkeys, and even hippos, for example, have all colonized new places after swimming or floating there.
It's incredibly improbable, but over millions of years, these once-in-a-million-year events will happen, on average, once every million years.
To better understand the migrations of duckbill dinosaurs, Longrich and his colleagues reconstructed their evolutionary tree.
The duckbills seem to originate in North America. They migrate across the land bridge into Asia, jump over into Europe, and then finally this European lineage, one branch of that evolutionary tree jumps into Africa.
Longrich's team dubbed the new species Ajnabia odysseus. Some duckbills were 50 feet long, but Ajnabia was perhaps the smallest of these Cretaceous vegetarians, about the size of a pony. And while North American duckbills were being hunted down by hungry T-Rex, in Africa, Ajnabia likely had to contend with fearsome abelisaurs, which were smaller but similar to T-Rex. The study is in the journal Cretaceous Research. Insights into Ajnabia could help answer questions about the end of the age of the dinosaurs.
This is just before the asteroid hit, so we're getting a snapshot of the dinosaurs in their final moments, the sort of twilight of the dinosaurs, along with things like T-Rex and Triceratops. These were the last dinosaurs on Earth.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Suzanne Bard.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Gaines. As fall turns to winter, the flu season will be upon us in force. The best way to avoid influenza is to get immunized. Dr. Joe Brazee is a researcher with CDC's National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases. He's joining us today to discuss the importance of getting the flu vaccine. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe, let's start with how long does the flu season last?
In general, flu seasons will last for several months in the United States at the national level. Each year it begins in the fall, usually peaks between January and March, and ends in the spring. But the timing of flu season is unpredictable, especially at the local level. So because we can't tell for sure when it will start, when it will peak, and when it will end in every community, we want to make sure that people get vaccinated as early as possible when the flu vaccines become available in the late summer and early fall.
Well, who should get vaccinated?
Everyone 6 months of age and older should get vaccinated against the flu each and every year. This is especially important for people at high risk of complications or severe flu if they get infected.
Which groups are at higher risk for complications from the flu?
Well, some people are at especially higher risk for severe flu or complications. These are people who are very young, like kids under 5 years of age, anybody 65 years and older, and people with underlying health disorders like heart disease, lung disease, kidney disease, or diseases of the immune system, and pregnant women.
Joe, how effective is the vaccine for preventing flu?
Well, vaccine is the single best way to protect you and your family from the flu each year. Most years, the vaccine reduces a person's chance of getting the flu and complications from the flu by about 50 to 70%. But how well it works can vary from season to season and by person. So remember that vaccine is one of 3 ways you can protect yourself against the flu. The other ones are good hygiene, like hand washing, covering your cough, staying home when you're sick, and finally medications. There are medications that your doctor can prescribe to treat the flu if you get it.
Are there any side effects from getting vaccinated?
Well, there are 2 types of flu vaccines. First, the shots. The most common side effects with the flu shots are soreness or redness in your arm for a day or 2 after getting the vaccine. The nasal spray vaccines can cause runny nose or congestion or low-grade fever in some people for, again, about a day or 2 after getting the vaccine. So these side effects are mild compared with the disease itself, which causes hundreds of thousands of hospitalizations and tens of thousands of deaths each year in the United States. Remember that the vaccine is the safest and most effective way to prevent flu each and every year.
Joe, where can listeners get more information about the flu vaccine?
We'll go to cdc.gov/flu.
Thanks, Joe. I've been talking today with CDC's Dr. Joe Brazee about the annual flu vaccine. Remember, everyone 6 months and older should be vaccinated. To get your annual flu vaccine, see your healthcare provider or go to a pharmacy, grocery store, or clinic in your area. If you get influenza, talk with your healthcare provider right away about antiviral medication. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Robert Gaines for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Could the Supreme Court kill Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, all 955 pages of it, for lack of a few words? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. In November, the Trump administration argued to the Supreme Court that it should kill the entire ACA because one provision is unconstitutional. Previously, the High Court had ruled that the ACA's individual mandate, which requires people to have insurance or pay a tax, was constitutional because that provision fell within Congress's power to tax. But after that, Congress eliminated the tax, which meant that the basis for the Supreme Court's decision no longer existed, and so the Supreme Court now is expected to strike down the individual mandate, which raises the issue, what happens to the rest of the law? Or in legal parlance, is it severable? Some laws have what's called the severability clause, a few words, a simple sentence that says, if one part of the law is declared illegal or unconstitutional, the rest of the law survives. That is, it's severable. Some laws have a non-severability clause. Many laws don't say one way or the other, and the ACA is one of those, which leaves it up to the court to decide which means when the court is declaring a piece of a law unconstitutional, should it use a scalpel or a bulldozer on the rest of it? The fate of Obamacare and the health insurance that it provides for 20 million people may depend on the answer to that question, which we'll learn in 2021. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
This is 60 Second Civics from the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. From his first year in the Virginia legislature in 1776, James Madison was an advocate of religious freedom. In colonial Virginia, the Anglican or Episcopal Church was established by law as the official religion and received public funding. Madison became convinced such favoritism was wrong because it discriminated against Baptists and other religions in Virginia. Madison believed that allowing a diversity of faiths to exist together on an equal footing was the best assurance against religious persecution and strife. That's all for today's podcast. The show's theme song is Complacent by Cheryl B. Englehart. You can find Cheryl online at cbemusic.com. 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
America certainly has an abundance of food, even though many Americans do not. Yet, we face a momentous choice of whether to pursue a food future rooted in the ethic of sustainable agriculture or one based on the exploitative ethic of agri-industry. What better symbol of agri-industry's vision of food than that ubiquitous Thanksgiving bird, the butterball turkey? The butterball has been hoisted onto our tables by huge advertising budgets and regular promotion payments to supermarkets. The birds themselves have been grotesquely deformed by industrial geneticists who created breasts so ponderous that the turkeys can't walk, stand up, or even reproduce on their own, thus earning the nickname dead-end birds. Adding torture to this intentional deformity, the industry sentences these once majestic fowl to dismal lives in tiny confinement cages inside the sprawling steel and concrete animal factories that scar America's rural landscape, monuments to greed-based corporate husbandry. As the eminent farmer-poet-activist Wendell Berry tells us, eating is a profound political act. It lets you and me vote for the butterball industrial model or choose to go back to the future of agriculture, which is the art and science of cooperating with rather than trying to overwhelm nature. That cooperative ethic is the choice of the remarkable good food uprising that has spread across the country in the past 30 years. Now, the fastest-growing segment of the food economy, it is creating the alternative model of a local, sustainable, small-scale, community-based, organic, humane, healthy, democratic, and tasty food system for all. This is Jim Hightower saying, to take part in the good food movement and find small-scale farmers, artisans, farmers markets, and other resources in your area, visit www.localharvest.org.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1910. That was the day when thousands of people came to see the location where a fire had ravaged a sweatshop in Newark, New Jersey. The day before, at least 26 women perished in the inferno. The workers of the Alfred and Irving Wolfe Muslin Undergarment Company made nightgowns. On the morning of the fire, there were more than 100 women crowded into the 4th floor workspace. The fire broke out when a can of gasoline was knocked over in the lamp company located below the sweatshop. The floors of the garment shop were wooden and strewn with fabric. The fire spread quickly. It roared up so fast. Even though there was a fire station across the street, the fire crew could not get there in time. It would become the worst fire in Newark's history. Desperate women tried to escape, but the fire safety exits were not adequate. Some of the women leapt to their deaths from the 4th-story windows. The fire became national news. No one was ever held legally accountable for the conditions that led to the fire. Less than a year and a half later, tragedy would again strike the garment industry when the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire would claim the lives of 146 workers. The events of the Newark fire faded into the annals of history. For years, no memorial marked the location. Richard Greenwald, a dean at a nearby university, thought that the women who died deserved to be remembered. As the 100th anniversary approached, he found the graves of 25 of the women and organized a memorial ceremony. He also helped to create a bronze plaque to remember the site. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Quite a bit of fog out there right now, and an air stagnation advisory through the weekend. Oh my. Looks like we're going to be a tad warmer today than yesterday. We're going to be in the mid-50s with partly cloudy skies. Winds will be light and variable. Clear to partly cloudy tonight with lows in the low 30s, upper 20s, low 30s. Winds will be light and variable. And tomorrow, Saturday, a small chance of rain. Really, the big rain will be coming on Monday. But we'll have sunshine and clouds mixed tomorrow, Saturday, with highs in the low 50s, winds light and variable. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County, here in the southern part of Oregon, have gone up over 100 overnight to 3,579, with 25 deceased. And in spite of what my Trump voting brother says, the hospitals and the doctors are not getting kickback for inflating the cases, please. Well, it looks like pollen is rated at none. The air quality index is an unhealthy 118 parts per million because of that air stagnation warning. And the daytime UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.33 inches, visibility is less than a mile, and relative humidity is at 90%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world, and every part of my P-tape is true. Every single bit. Well, it looks like London is 43 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 51 and sunny. Rome is 61 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 38 and cloudy. Kabul is 37 with smoke, which means they have a lot more air stagnation than we have here. Hong Kong is 64 and clear. Tokyo is 53 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 48 degrees and sunny. And New York is 58 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Jill Lawless of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The British government said today, Friday, it has formally asked the country's medicines regulator to assess whether a coronavirus vaccine developed by AstraZeneca and Oxford University should be authorized for use. The step comes amid questions about preliminary results from trials of the jab. I think they mean the injection. After the company and the university acknowledged that the most encouraging part of their findings stemmed from a dosing error. UK Health Secretary Matt Hancock said he had asked the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency to determine whether the vaccine meets rigorous safety standards. It's the second vaccine candidate to reach the formal assessment stage in Britain, following a shot developed by Pfizer and its German partner BioNTech. A third vaccine from U.S. firm Moderna is not far behind. The British government has ordered 100 million doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine and plans to start distributing it in December if it gains approval. The regulator said it could not give a time frame for possible approval of the vaccines, and I got to tell you, that's a good news there. MHRA Chief Executive June Rain said no vaccine would be authorized for supply in the UK unless the expected standards of safety, quality, and efficacy are met. Oxford and AstraZeneca reported Monday that their vaccine appeared to be 62% effective in people who received 2 doses and 90% effective when volunteers were given a half dose, followed by a full dose. They did not mention at the time, but later acknowledged that a manufacturing issue had resulted in a half dose of the vaccine being administered as the first dose to some participants. The drug makers informed the UK regulator of the issue when it was discovered, and it was agreed to complete the late-stage trial with 2 groups.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Sopeng Chang of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Cambodian court yesterday, Thursday, began hearing the cases of nearly 130 government critics and opponents charged with treason for taking part in nonviolent political protests and activities over the past 3 years in what one of them called a sham trial. Only 33 defendants attended yesterday's session at the Phnom Penh Municipal Court, with some believed to be overseas. Most are former members or supporters of the disbanded Cambodia National Rescue Party. As the sole opposition party in Parliament, it had been expected to present a strong challenge to Prime Minister Hun Sen's ruling Cambodian People's Party in the 2018 general election. But in late 2017, Hun Sen launched a sweeping crackdown on his opponents, and the party was forced by the High Court to disband, and its lawmakers removed from Parliament. Many people believed the court acted to ensure that Hun Sen's party won by sweeping all the seats. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we're going to meet up on Monday for River City Hash Monday. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.